And we are live. This is Zaiste Programming. Thanks for joining me for another exciting interview. Today we will be talking with Zoltan Kochan, who's a software engineer and creator of a package manager called Pnpm. Hello, Zoltan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much for being here. I'm extremely excited about this interview. And
Thanks
there
for
is a
having me.
traditional... Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There's a tradition on this channel. I usually ask the first question about games. Are you a player? Do you play video games? And if so, what's your favorite game?
Yeah, sure. I used to play a lot. I like a lot of different games, but recently, I guess my favorite game in the last 2 years is Europa Universalis4. It's a strategy game. It's basically you start with the map of the world in 1444, the historic map, and you can choose which country you play, and then you can change history. So it's a very interesting game. I like it. I learned a lot about the world, about history, thanks to this game.
So you can put your mind and think about slowly
Yeah.
everything without
Yeah, like you can choose Poland and then conquest Russia. And
That's interesting.
yeah.
So you also created Pnpm, and it's an exciting project. It's a package manager for JavaScript and TypeScript, and it has a bunch of interesting features. And two the most interesting ones are it's extremely fast and it's extremely disk efficient. And I was wondering how difficult it is to create a package manager. What's
I think, yeah, I think it's easy to start. It's easy to write a basic package manager with a minimal set of features. Like if you don't support peer dependencies, for instance, it's super easy. You can do it in 2 days, I guess. Yeah. But today's package managers, especially the JavaScript package managers, have so many features because they serve so many different use cases, so many different companies with their specific needs, that it would take, I think it would take years to make a competitor for npm CLI and Yarn. So that's why Pnpm is also not a new project. It was created in 2015, and I joined at 2016. So it's a constant development for the last 6 years.
And what was the motivation? What was the things that you didn't like in npm and Yarn that you started working on Pnpm?
So at my previous company, I worked at Just Answer. We had a huge repository, a huge monorepository with, okay, it wasn't so huge. It was maybe under 100 packages only. But even at this scale, npm with an internal tool that worked similar to Lerna was super slow. So like it was basically executing npm install concurrently for these 40 packages, I believe, and it was running for like 10 minutes maybe. So that was one of the reasons. It was super slow and it was killing my disk. It was so heavy that actually I burned one of my disks because I was working on the front end. So I was running this install very frequently, and it actually killed my disk. And also, it consumed a lot of disk space because it copied all these packages to 40 places. And I had constant issues with disk space. And I don't remember how I found it, but somehow I found this project, Pnpm, and at that time it wasn't really maintained. It was created by Rico Cruz, a developer from Philippines. And it was actually based on a different project called IED by Alexander Google. So this first guy, Alexander Google, he was inspired by NixOS, I believe, where they use symlinks to write these packages.
I wanted to ask you before we jump into like the technical details. Maybe we should also tell that Pnpm has those differences to traditional package managers, the other two, I mean, npm
Yeah.
and Yarn. That you mentioned that briefly, that you don't need to copy dependencies each time. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, how it works from the very top level, why you don't have to copy those dependencies, and what's so special about Pnpm.
Yeah, this is a feature that I added lately when I joined the project. In Pnpm, in the first versions, we did not use a content addressable store. So from version 4, we use a content addressable store. But in the first version, we just created a global storage in a single place on the disk, and this global store had a separate folder for each package. So like you would have a folder for ESLint version 1.0.0, as different folder for version ESLint version 2.0.0, and so on. And when you install ESLint in one of your projects on the disk, you don't make a copy of this ESLint package to node modules, but instead Pnpm will create hard links to files in this global store. So you, it will look like a separate file to Node.js, to the VS Code, to anything on the system. It's a real separate file, but in reality, the pointers of those files point to the same location on the disk as the pointers is in the global store. And you can have like 20 projects on your disk. They can all have this ESLint in the node modules, but they won't consume 20 times the size of ESLint. They will just use a single instance of ESLint.
So everything is in a single location, and we just point to this very single location on the disk.
That's correct.
And so you mentioned hard links. So hard links are the Unix concept, right? And I was wondering, did you have had any challenges adopting this for Windows?
Yeah, hard links work fine with Windows.
Mm-hmm.
They are supported with the same API as on Linux. Actually, so you just call the same function of Node.js. Mm-hmm. Maybe under the hood they call some different system functions, but Node.js provides an API for it.
When I was researching this episode, I've seen many comments asking about Windows, and you always were responding that you are using Windows pretty often at work, and you support it very well.
Yeah, it's correct. At my previous company, we used the Windows stack, and so Windows issues had priority for me because I was using a Windows machine. And actually, there are quite a few projects at Microsoft that use Pnpm.
Could you mention the names
I believe it's Office 365,
Okay, wow.
and SharePoint. They actually don't use it directly. They have their own like wrapper. They have this tool called Rust, not Rust, but sorry, Rush. Rush. It's a monorepository managing tool, and they can. So they call the package manager under the hood, and I think they use Pnpm by default, but you can configure it to use Yarn as well.
So for those who are on the fence, for example, thinking that it only is supported on a specific OS, it's not true. And at the same time, a lot of big companies is now using Pnpm.
Yeah. So Microsoft uses it for quite a few years. When they wanted to switch to it, I helped them out. I prioritized their issues and actually debugged some bugs, and they are pretty happy about it. I mean, the Rust team.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing, which is like effect of this approach you use in Pnpm, is that Pnpm is much faster. And I was wondering if you could explain how it works under the hood when you have, for example, the same dependency in different versions, and maybe other things that contribute to the fact that Pnpm is so fast, and why it's so fast, and why it's faster than NPM and Yarn.
Yeah, I think from the very start, it had a pretty good design. So at the time I took it over from the previous maintainer, it already had a pretty good design, and I just did not change how it works. So the basic idea is that unlike Yarn, which has separate stages for installation, like first Yarn would resolve all the whole dependency graph, then it would fetch all the packages, and only then it would write all the files into the cache and non-modules. Maybe I'm not completely right about everything, but overall it works like this. So it has different stages. But in Pnpm, all the stages are done as soon as possible. So as soon as a package is resolved, its tarball is fetched to the content addressable store, and as soon as it's written to the content addressable storage, it is written to the node modules. So some package might it may at some point some of the packages weren't even resolved, but some other packages are already written into node modules. So it's very immediate in its actions. I guess one of the reasons we could do it is because we use a different node module structure where we don't hoist. So if we would hoist, we would need to resolve the dependency graph before writing the node modules directly.
Could we explain what hoisting is in the context of Pnpm for people who may not know this concept and why it's needed?
Yeah. You may remember in node npm 2 and 1, the node module structure was different, not like in nowadays. So in the past, in the root of the node modules, there were only the direct dependencies of the project. And then you could open one of those dependencies, and it had a node modules of itself with its own dependencies. But this had issues. One of the issues was that on Windows you have a limit of the path, so you can't nest a lot of directories into each other. And there were long max path errors, I believe. And the second one was duplication. The same package was copied several times in the same node modules. And in npm 3, they fixed it by moving all the packages to the root of node modules.
So it's flat.
Yeah, so it's flat. And so if there are two packages of the same version, two versions of the same package in a node modules, one of them will be hoisted to the root, and the other one will be nested into one of the sub-dependencies. But it tries to make it as flat as possible. But in order to make this hoisted node modules, you really need to know about your whole graph. You can't write it before you know that there are no conflicts with other packages.
Okay.
And so this is actually the point where this competing package manager was created, when npm decided to make these flat node modules. There were people that came up with an alternative solution using symlinks. Symlinks allowed them to create such flat directory structure as well, but like
So if we move, for example, from this symlink to Pnpm, in Pnpm you don't have to have the flat structure, right? You can have it nested, but under the hood something different changes. Could you explain what happens when?
Yeah. So maybe I can share my screen and show it.
Yeah, maybe we should do a demo, and maybe that'll be easier for the viewers as well. Okay, let's.
Okay, so this is the Pnpm repository. So I will show it, Pnpm install in the Pnpm repository. And this is the node modules directory, and these packages are direct dependencies of the project.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that these are not real directories, but these are just symlinks. So all these files in the root of node modules are symlinks, and the real location of these packages is in a subdirectory called .pnpm.
So Pnpm contains all the packages that you have in your project.
Yes, all direct and indirect, all packages are inside this directory. And if you open up one of the directories, you'll see that it has a node modules subdirectory, and here these are the actual files of the package. So the symlink will point to this folder, and the dependencies of this package are in the same folder as the package itself. So this is actually a dependency of this bubble helper, and it is a symlink as well.
And if I understand correctly, all of those dependencies here, they are stored in the central location on your disk. And
Yes, these files are actually hard links. So each of this file is a hard link. Yeah.
So it looks like a different file, but in fact, it doesn't take additional space. It just points to the location, your central location, right?
Yeah. So I created here another example. Actually, I can. I will install ESLint. You see, when I first run, now I have a clear store because I use I specifically set the store to a local directory. So I had a cold cache here, and all the packages were downloaded.
Okay.
Now I install some Webpack, for instance. And you see that some of the packages were reused. So we only downloaded 61 additional packages.
And it's crazy fast.
Yeah. And here you can see the content addressable store. It looks similar to how Git has a content addressable store as well. So it has this long path names with SHA 512, I guess, coding.
And could we explain why it's needed and how it works? What's the advantage of using content addressable storage?
So if you have, for instance, two different, like, okay, let's say we update ESLint to a newer version. Maybe it only has changes to some of the files of the package, yeah? Maybe you have just a patch with a fix in one of the files. In this case, you will not write all the files of ESLint again to your file system. Only that modified file will be written because its content is different. So these file names, they are calculated by the content of the file. Hence, if you have two files with the same content, it doesn't matter that they are from different packages or different versions of the same package. If the content is the same, like maybe you have the same license file in all of your packages, right? In that case, all those license files will be hard linked from the same file in the content addressable store. So if I open one of these files,
if I understand correctly, if you have the same, let's say MIT license in hundreds of projects, this text will only occupy the place once on your disk, right?
Yes, yes. So if I open one of these files in this store, you can see that it's just some JS file. But the content of if you generate a hash from the content of this file, then it will be this hash. This is how it works.
So you also mentioned on your website that another advantage of Pnpm is that it has this built-in support for monorepos. And I was wondering if you could expand on, maybe first we should talk about what are monorepos and how Pnpm helps with that.
Yeah, so a monorepo is basically a repository that contains many packages or many projects. Like, for instance, the Pnpm repository is a monorepo as well. So it has like a packages folder with all these different npm packages. So monorepos are very convenient to use, but only if the tooling is good. If the tooling is bad, it can be a misery to use a monorepo.
So if you say bad, you mean like it's slow or it's too complex? Or If I ask differently.
Yeah, slow, I believe, is one of the biggest problems, and also unreliable, non-deterministic. It works on someone's machine. Maybe the cache is gets corrupted in some unusual situations. I'm not saying that Pnpm solves all of those issues, but Pnpm solves the dependency management aspect of a monorepo pretty well. So,
for example, with Pnpm, you don't need additional tools, right? You already have this support for the monorepo, for managing monorepos.
Yes. So if you create a Pnpm workspace YAML file in the root of the repository, this is actually a feature that Yarn has as well. A similar feature. Yarn calls it workspaces. We kind of developed it at the same time as Yarn, and we called it a workspace. So it's kind of confusing, but you can think about a workspace as a synonym to a monorepo. So it has, you can specify these globs that tell Pnpm in what directories it should look for packages. And when you run Pnpm install, it basically installs all the node modules in the projects in the repository.
And it's also very fast, given how many dependencies you had. It was almost 2,000 dependencies, right? Or
yeah, it is actually, I would say it is still a pretty small monorepository.
Okay.
I've worked at my previous company, we had like 5,000 dependencies, but it was still very fast.
I wanted to ask you, what's your take when you should use monorepos? Are monorepos okay for small projects, in your opinion, or there is a certain level of complexity that you should start thinking about splitting your, let's say, big project into smaller ones and create a monorepo?
I think it's my personal opinion, but I think if you have if you work on an application and you have a team, it's pretty convenient to have a monorepo and to start development using a monorepo. But you need to invest into good tooling. You need to research what will you use and how good it works for your team. Actually, there are a lot of solutions for monorepo management. There is the Rush, NX. I actually work now at a company called Bit, and it helps with this as well.
So we mentioned like a three things that are like things that distinguish Pnpm. And I was wondering if there are other things we could say about Pnpm, like a hidden tricks or things maybe that people don't know yet about Pnpm that you would recommend checking out. Besides speed, disk efficiency, and support for monorepos.
Yeah, definitely. I hope I'll recall all of them. So, for instance, you can manage the Node.js versions with Pnpm.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know if it's how it will work out, because recently the lead maintainer of Yarn had contributed to Node.js and added Corpac. You may have heard about it.
Could you tell us a little bit about Corpac? I've
Yeah.
heard about it, but maybe not all the viewers have.
Corpac is a package manager basically. So yeah, it is Node.js 16, I think 16.13 or newer. You can basically run Corpac enable.
And you can specify your suggested package manager, right? So you don't have to be tied to npm.
Yeah, you just first you need to enable it because it's an experimental feature.
Okay.
And then you can just run Pnpm or Yarn. It will be already on your system. So we could say that Pnpm and Yarn are bundled with Node.js as npm as well. And
at the same time, npm also manages Node.js versions, we could say.
Yeah, so I kind of now I'm kind of in an interesting situation because Corpac can override Pnpm and Pnpm can override Node.js. So I'm not sure yet how to solve it or what will be the future of this. But yeah, there are. I think our users like to manage Node.js with Pnpm. So you can basically run Pnpm and views global and specify the version of Node.js that you want, and it will install it.
Okay.
And actually, you can install Pnpm without having Node.js on the system, because we compile the Pnpm CLI with the Node.js into an executable.
Okay, interesting.
It makes it even faster. Yeah, it's a binary. So you can actually have Pnpm on a system where Node.js is not yet present, and you can then install Node.js.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that. So what would be the best way to install Pnpm? Just fetching the binary directly? That would be the most preferable way?
Yeah, currently if you open the Pnpm docs, this solution will be specified as the first installation method.
Gotcha.
But as I said, with Corpac, now you actually have Pnpm, let's say, pre-installed with Node.js. You just need to run Corpac enable. So it's your choice, I guess. You can have the compiled Pnpm binary. It will be a little bit faster. And you'll be able to manage Node.js. Or you can run it, install it through Corpac enable.
And another feature is this strictness you mentioned. And could we talk about what lack of strictness, what risks we have if, for example, the structure of node modules is not strict?
Yeah, let's see an example with npm. So with npm, we will have all the dependencies of Webpack in the root of node modules. And this means that in code, we'll be able to require any of these those packages. So even though I installed only Webpack, I have all these dozens of packages. And if I write like require AGV, this code will work. And I can actually publish such package, even though AGV is not in the dependencies.
Yeah.
So let's assume Then someone publishes Webpack 564 or 565.0, and there AGV was removed from its dependencies. And so our package will fail, even though we did not republish our package and anything. Or they updated it to some other version, and there was a breaking change in AGV. Our code will fail as well.
And is Pnpm the only one doing that? Is, for example, Yarn doing something about that?
Yeah, actually, Yarn Classic was created in a similar node modules to npm, so it had the same issues. But Yarn PNP, so the Yarn plug and play, it is strict as well. So I guess it is even more stricter than Pnpm.
I wanted to also ask you about the future of Pnpm. What are the features you are planning to add, like the must-haves on your list, or things you would like to have, like nice to haves? What's missing for Pnpm to be perfect?
I think I might add an option to make such hoisted node modules with Pnpm as well, without using symlinks. Because even after so many years that Pnpm exists, there are still a lot of there are some tools that don't like symlinks. Like, for instance, Electron apps by default, without some tweaks, they don't work with symlinks. Some of the tools of Angular, I think Ivy it's called, also don't like symlinks. And some Lambda servers, like AWS servers, they don't support symlinks. There are workarounds to all these things. So, for instance, you can bundle your application and deploy it as a bundled file, and it will work. But I think if we add this feature to Pnpm, we'll basically support the whole ecosystem.
So if I understand correctly, right now, if you want to work on an Electron app, it's not fully supported. You may encounter some problems.
Yeah. So, I think there are solutions to tweak it. Like, I believe it's the package manager of Electron that is.
I'm not familiar with that, but maybe someone in chat could help us.
I don't have an idea about Electron as well, but I know that it has issues, and we have some workarounds. But for new users, we need to explain it, and they have bad first experience. And when there is a bad first experience, usually people just post some angry tweet and say that it's a crappy project.
So I wanted to ask you about the places you mentioned, that the places that you may have problems working in Pnpm. And for example, I received some comments on my videos that you have those wizards, like create next app, and they force you to use, so they create a structure of your project, and then they force on you some things. And I was wondering if there would be a solution that is general enough, so you don't have to, so that your package manager is transparently being picked up from what you have in your system. Is, for example, Corpac a solution to that? So those wizards could, be
Actually, though, some of those wizards, I think the Vue wizard and the Angular, at least, they have a step where you can select the package manager, and they have 3 options: npm, yarn, or pnpm. And yeah, Corpac introduces a new field in packages on. So if you use Corpac, you can write a field called package manager, and here you can specify which package manager
You want to use.
should be used for this project. Yeah, and you can even specify an exact version like this.
Because I was wondering in the sense that, I was checking for example, for the Next.js project, I was checking the GitHub issues, and it's always, if they want to support Pnpm, they need to add it manually. And I was wondering if moving forward, there will be a solution that the maintainers of such projects don't have to take care of that, and people who use those wizards can, select on their own without any intervention on their side. So that's maybe Corpac would be a great fit for that.
Yeah, so now if I run yarn here, it should fail actually, but I don't have Corpac enabled because of some issue. So, but it should fail, and it should tell me that this project uses npm, and then you can run npm install, and it will work. Yeah, and you actually shouldn't install neither yarn or pnpm. You'll already have it with Corpac.
So I would like to ask our audience, if you have any questions to Zoltan, please tell us. And there is an interesting comment here. I will maybe display it on the screen from Sebastian. Thank you for your work, Zoltan. So,
thanks. I think there is a question about differences with yarn.
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit, but we can, if you'd like, we could elaborate.
Yeah, so actually, there are less and less differences, I guess, because we are competing all the time, and yarn are adding features that are in Pnpm, and Pnpm is adding features that are in yarn. Like I think in yarn 3, they even added an option to create a Pnpm styled node modules.
Okay.
So you can actually set up yarn to work the same as Pnpm in a way. Yeah.
Do they use the content addressable storage as well?
Yeah, they added. I think they added an option for it in yarn 3, and they plan to make it the default in yarn 4. That's what I heard. I guess the biggest difference is that by default yarn still uses plug and play. And it's funny because Pnpm also added plug and play. So actually, yeah, there are a lot of similarities. Just I guess pick whichever you like, and be nice to the maintainers.
So I'm a little bit biased because I love Pnpm, but it's nice to know that. I wanted to ask you, because Pnpm is written in TypeScript right now, and have you thought about rewriting it in a lower level programming language? And does it make sense? Because maybe in certain scenarios, having like a lower level language, it's not really necessary, and maybe that's the case here. What's your?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. If it was a simple task, I would have already done that, just to see if it improves speed or not. But it's a pretty huge effort to do. And I'm not fully sure it will make a big difference, because I understand that it makes a big difference in to rewrite a bundler or a compiler to a native language, which are really heavy tasks for the CPU. But a package manager For the package manager, the most time-consuming stuff is network requests and downloading pretty big files.
Mhm.
And Node.js does it pretty well already, I believe. And also file system operations are heavy operation. Is a heavy stuff, but Node.js I don't think has a big difference there
Mhm.
with a native language, because it's done by the system, not by your code. There are efforts to write package managers for JavaScript in native languages. There is this project called Volt or Volta. No, Volt. Volta is a Node.js version manager, and Volt is this JavaScript package manager written in Rust. And they claim that it's a lot faster than Pmpm or Yarn or npm. So we'll see. I guess it's early to say at this point, but and there is, I think, also an effort to write it in Zig.
Zig is getting very popular recently. A lot of people are using it to rewrite certain tools, especially from Lycin and JavaScript and TypeScript. But,
have you tried to learn it?
yeah, I just try to use it a bit. I'm pretty impressed by the work they did. But I think it's interesting. There is this project called Ban. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
Yeah, actually, this is the project that tries to implement the package manager in Zig. Yeah.
They also want to do a package manager. Okay.
Yeah, they want to integrate a package manager as well. But I heard that from the Vault maintainer. So I guess we'll soon know if it makes a difference or no.
And if you had to choose, which language would you choose besides what's your closest to your heart, besides TypeScript?
I'm so lazy. I would choose whichever is faster to learn.
Okay.
I actually tried to learn Rust, but it takes pretty a lot of time, I guess, to learn it, because it's very different compared to TypeScript. Like if you take C or C++, it has a lot of similarities with JavaScript. But this with Rust, you need to change the way you think about programming, I guess, completely. And I think Zig is easier to learn. That's what I heard. So maybe I will try that.
Awesome. I think we made a tour. Zoltan, thank you very much for being here. I look forward to the new developments in Pnpm. Maybe we'll have a chance to talk again when there is a new feature being added. I'm not sure if there are any questions from our audience besides what we had. But if not, thank you very much again for this session, and good luck with developments, and speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here.